you and the Gabbai will show us here in person. That's what it is.
Samech Vav, base Teves, page Tzadik base.
Right, so we were dealing with the kasha that we saw a mila in Talmud Bavli, even over Talmud Yerushalmi, even though there are great milas in Talmud Yerushalmi, as we saw. That's a union from Chochma Brura, and it's not a union from Machshachim, it's not a union from Choshech, no, on the contrary, union from Oyer. The Gilu is similar to the union of Teres B'Ksav, and there's a great mila in the Gilui of Talmud Yerushalmi as compared to Talmud Bavli. Nonetheless, through the Yagia and through the Choshech Kaviochel, as it were, in Talmud Bavli, which leads to the Kashas, the Pilpulim, and the Ribu Yagia, which is needed to come to some form of Maskona, particularly to be Paskin Halacha, mitot the Sukyas of Talmud Bavli. And Ali Dezeh, the mensch reaches through that Yagia, he comes to a much deeper and higher Madrega in his Kashas, in Elikus, than it's possible even to the greatness of Talmud Yerushalmi. So we saw that the eventual Maskana is that there's a great Mila in Talmud Bavli, despite the tremendous elevation of Talmud Yerushalmi compared to Talmud Bavli, in the Aveda and the Yagia. Not necessarily in the Etzem Gilu Oyer Shebadova, Mitzad Atzmon, but in the Aveda of the Loimdim, and through the Aveda of Yidden, and their struggle and overcoming of all the kashiyas and the stilas which come inside the choshech, the helm of the levushim of Asiya, as we saw, the mensch reaches the union of helm ha'atzmi, how it is mamish in the Eivishter, mitzad the beyichud b'matzmusa yisbar, even higher than the helm ha'atzmi of Chochma, what we saw in the previous drush in Avraham Zoke. So therefore, that led us to a kasha which we saw at the beginning of the brackets. If there's such a tremendous mila, and the ultimate achievement of Talmud Bavli is much greater mitzad Elohim than Talmud Yerushalmi, then that takes us back to the Gemara that we had right near the beginning of the Hemshech, mamish in the second Maimah, where we brought down the story of Reb Zayda, brought down in the Gemara in the Sekta Bava Metzia. The Reb Zayda, when he was Oila from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, then he fasted different girosois in the Gemara, whether it's 40 fasts or 100 fasts, but he fasted a lot of fasts in order to forget Talmud Bavli, in order that he should be able to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. And so the question is that if Talmud Bavli has such an unbelievable Mailam, it's at the Loimdim, and the ultimate Ilui that you can reach through Talmud Bavli is greater even than the great Ilui Talmud Yerushalmi, then why did he make such an effort? And he fasted, the Rebbe brings here the Gilsa of Meya Tanisa, in order that he should forget Talmud Bavli and be able to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. He's got the Mila of Talmud Bavli, the Mila of Talmud Bavli being so great, why would he want to forget it in order to go down, as it were, to learn Talmud Yerushalmi? And that was the kasha that we began with, and we have to now deal and enter the Terutzim, what the Rebbe now presents, beneged to that shaila. In the bracket, we'll just repeat the question. Val pia now tzorik lahovin masher Reb Zayda tzom meya tanisa b'dei lishachach Talmud Bavli ki hechid l'umed Talmud Yerushalmi. Says the Gemara over there in Bava Metzia. So why would he do that? Me'achish Talmud Bavli hu b'madrega gavoya kol kach. Since Talmud Bavli is so high, then he already had Talmud Bavli. Why would he want to forget Talmud Bavli and go down to a low madrega and he would fast. A fast is a very drastic thing. He mamish, how do you call it? He was Messiah Satzme in a very deep tzar in order to pass out of the whole Oifen learning in Talmud Bavli. If Talmud Bavli is so high, then what was the purpose of him doing such a inyan? Yesh Leimar, but Yesh Leimar is already the beginning of the Teretz. Kemoya neshoma b'tzeisa me'elam hazeh la'alois l'gan Eden hatachtoi. Shorik tavila b'nahar dinoyer. Now that's a Rosh Teves, brought down in the Zohar Kodesh in several places, that there's literally a river of fire, Nahar Dinoyer it's called. It's a river of fire that when the neshama comes up from this world and wants to enter even Gan Eden Hatachtoin, even the lower level in Gan Eden, then it has to literally be toivel in this river of fire. As to a tavila, it's called in the Gemara Nahar, in the Zohar Kodesh Nahar Dinoyer. What dinoyer is a word from that of flame. Yeah, in other words, the river which is made of flame. So when the neshamas in this world, it's well known that there are tremendous milas, Tafki in the Veda, Kanla, Lamata, Tafki here, Lamata, and particularly in the Limud HaTorah, Toiv Li Torah's Picho, this is well known, the famous beer, that Tafki Torah in Be'elam Hazeh. And as we say in Pirkei Avos, Yofi Shor Achas, but Tshuva or Ma'asim Tovim. That includes Limud HaTorah, Be'elam Hazeh, Mikol Chayei O'elam Ha'abo. There's a tremendous smile in learning down here in this world and in the Veda in this world. Nonetheless, when the neshama comes up with the Torah and the mitzvahs that it's done, Be'elam Hazeh, in order to enter the lowest level of Gan Eden, which is a Olam Boro and a Olam for Gilel Akus Betachlis, then it has to have literally a tavila of fire in Nahar Dinoyer. That was mentioned in the mind which we're going to bring shortly in the second mind of the Hamshah. Even if the neshama had been oisik in this world in what she was supposed to be doing. In other words, that she learned Torah and there was Makayim mitzvahs in a way that they purified and elevated the world. Avedus ha-birurim. Umikol mochim, torik liyes tavila. There has to be this immersion in this river of fire. What the implication of that is, that she's got to purify herself from something that was gained down here, despite the fact that she did the Aveda B'Shleimas. What is that in of that Tavil? Just like when I mentioned Toivo, L'tumasa, Hilamata, then he alidei the Tavila, then he loses and he becomes potter from a state of inability or improperness in certain inyanim, but that's in Tuma, and he becomes Tahor. So the same implication that Tavila is a necessity to somehow or another purify the inyan of the neshama, despite the fact that she was Eisach in Avedus Abirurim Bezeh Ho'elo. Hagam Shalideh Abirurim Avarim Hanitzoitzes Toyu. Says the Rebbe, even though through this Avedus Abirurim, then we elevate the Nitzutzes of Olam HaToyu. V'yesh b'zeh yisoren oyer godel. There's a tremendous advantage or tremendous elevated light which is brought down through the birur of the Nitzutzes of Toyu. As well on the famous Lashon of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach spoke about that on numerous occasions, the unif von oirus to Toyu bekelim the tikkun. Through the fact that we take the Nitzutzes of Toyu that fell in the Shviras HaKelim of Toyu, into their Golas literally in Olam Hazeh, alidei we elevate that nitzutz back to its shoyrish, then we cause a reach nichoyach laHashem, we cause a hamshocha from Olam HaToyu into Olam HaTikun, and the kelim through the avodah what the mensch does, he causes also a harchova in the kelim in Olam HaTzilus, and the kelim in Olam HaTikun are able to be makabel the oiros of Toihu. Well, at the beginning, it wouldn't have been shaykh if not the Aveda of the Adam. Lamata wouldn't have been shaykh such a thing. The Inyan from Toihu is on the contrary incomparably higher than tikkun, and tikkun means we fixed up what was not correct in toihu. But now we take the advantage of both worlds. We take the advantage of toihu, which was a very, very elevated oyer, and we bring that down into gilui, in the kelim of tikkun. So therefore, when a mensch has been oisik and avedus habirurim hilamata, then he's done a tremendous inyan. He's taken the nitzoitzes of oyer, of toihu, and he's brought them into a tikkun. He's elevated them back to their shoulders, and then because of the tremendous nafas ruach, what the Eibishter has in that, the Eibishter causes them to come back down and be mislavish in olam tikkun, in the kelim of tikkun. In other words, that the kelim of tikkun are also mittaken. They also become edler and higher, that they're able to be mekabel the eros of toihu, halidei the avodah of the adam lamata. So kunta is that the mensch has done a tremendously high inyan here lamata. Right? He's been mo'era the inyan of toihu, that it should be nimshach into the kelim of tikkun. V'yesh b'zeh yisron oyer godel. That's a tremendous new oyer, because well known that the oyer of Elam HaToyu is incomparably higher than the oyer how it is in tikkun. And nonetheless, that oyer becomes nimshach into the kelim of Elam HaTikkun. So that's a gilui oyer godel, a tremendous elevation of gilui oyer. Why? Because previously to that oyer was in a state of histalkus. It withdrew altogether because of the shviros hakelim, and only nitzotzes of it fell down into the inyan of golas v'shivya in the inyan of gashmis Elam hazeh lamata. Due to the fact that the Adam is mavara those nitzotzes, and they return into that oyer which was mistalik, instead of it being in a state of histalkus for havdolah, we bring it down begilui, and that's a oyer godel kiyadua. It's a very high level, and it comes down and unites with the inyan of Elam HaTikkun. Mikol mokim v'yesh ha'mavarer tzodik lislavish b'levush ha'mizbarer mizdabkim b'halevushim mibchinas ha'peseilas. So here's the pitch line that the Rebbe said, Emes, the Avedis Aberur Lamata is tremendous Aveda, but when you are oisik in this world, to be malad in the tzutzis of Toyu, you have to be mislabish in the dvarim hagashmiyim in order to reach those nitzutzis which are hidden inside the dvarim gashmiyim. And you can't just say, well, I'll just stand aside and I'll be a porish mi Elam hazeh, and then the nitzutzis will just somehow or another come looking for me. That doesn't happen. You have to go and enter the inyonim hagashmiyim. In other words, you have to be mislabish in the that you want to be matake. In other words, if you want to be mila, the inyan of nitzutzis in maholim and in oichlim, then you have to mamashit. If you want to be mavara, the inyan of the levushim, then you have to be mislavish in levushim, and all those inyanim require that a mensch become busy with their ha'olam if he wants to be mila. Other dvarim gashmiyim, then he has to work, and he has to have to do with inyanim mishcha, and all those inyanim trades and all sorts of things, where he enters the dvarim hagashmiyim, and he has to enter the levushim of the dova hamizbarer. He can't just say, well, I'll be a parush, and the nitzutzis will come looking for me. You have to enter the world and have to do with the world in order to get to those nitzutzis. As a dova yadua, that's the kavon al yoyna, the man should be mislavish davki in the levushim of Elam hazeh in order to elevate it and to be a mavara de mitzutza. Therefore, when you enter those levushim, then mizdabkim be'alevushim mibchinas ha'pseilas. Then in your levushim, and the levushim of the neshama, that person, his nefesh ruach, his machshava dibur ma'aseh, those are the levushim of the neshama, then harikot, there's kleptzat too. It sticks on a little bit of the pseilas of Elam hazeh. In other words, when a man eats, for example, it's very difficult that he shouldn't feel a certain tainug, a certain iskashas with Elam hazeh. So therefore, there's a certain interaction which occurs. Therefore, there occurs a slight, delicate pseilas, even though he did the best he could, and he got to the nitzot of toihu. However, there's a certain had it called stick-on reaction from the improper aspects of the levushim in which you have to be mizdaber and which you have to enter, be mislabi. Like the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, Perek Kov Ches, what he writes over there, a very similar Inyan, that he said that I'm misabik im manuval misnavel gamken. That if you wrestle with somebody that's all greasy and unpleasant, then you also get a little bit unpleasant and greasy from the having come such close contact. Because wrestling means that you mamish, you grab hold of one of the akilo mamish mistabkim or mislabshim, one in the other. So that's what the Alter Rebbe means over there. That ali day the avoide bezeho ilom. There's a certain trace that the impurities stick on to the man. So that was the Rebbe. When you come up, you've done a tremendous job, and you take it from Mavar and you took to Toihu. But there's a price. Having done that, in the levushim al-koponim of your neshama, not in the fimis ve'atzmis of the neshama, but in the machshava diburu maisa of the olam, which are levushim, and they are Torah mitzvahs. Torah chagav, it's talking with those levushim that is mekayim Torah mitzvahs. And there's a certain interaction with all the levushim of the dvarim gashmim v'achumriyim, and a certain pseilas sticks on in the ruchnius of the levushim of the neshama. So when she comes up into Gan Eden, even though she's going straight into Gan Eden, she's on her way directly into Gan Eden. We're not talking about anything worse than that, chas v'sholem, going directly into Gan Eden. Nonetheless, it has to be the zinyan of the blowtorch type of process. That's the inif in the Tavila, Benaha Dinoya, to purify those little traces of Pesailas they stuck on into the levushim of the neshama. So therefore we see that everything has a price. Emes, he's done his avodah b'ne'emonas, b'shleimas, and he was mevarer all the netzutzis that were there, and he's chelik ba'olam. However, he still has to, in order to enter the Gilei Akusa Gan Eden, he has to have a Tavila Benaha Dinoya. And he brings an example to Rabbi Ukemoi, Vayaz Nitchom al Begodai, V'chol Malbushai Egoalti. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya Novi where Eibishter is talking about Eliosit Love, that after you'll be he'll deal with all the goyim, and he'll be mavarer, and he'll purify all those who are yeshayach and those who are not, and he'll be done as kol oilam kulei. Then when he will come finally to reveal himself, b'Yerushalayim and b'Binyan HaMikdash v'chulu, then all the Yidden will say, "Who's this coming from Edom?" And his garments are slightly soiled. Kaviochel means the Eibush. We'll see the Kaviochel, the Eibush has got slightly soiled garments. So the Eibush said that even that there will be Yoz Nitchom. What Nitchom means literally their blood, or the word that's from the word Netzach, which means triumph or power. In other words, that Rashi and the other Meforshim explain over there that sometimes the blood or the lifeblood of a person is called Nitzchoi. That's like his victory, what keeps him going, what makes him whole. That the blood of these peoples that I have to be Mavara before Mashiach comes will literally sprinkle, or how do you call it, be spilt on my clothes. The whole Malbushai Egaolti, for the word Egaolti means to make pleasant, how do you call it, you say, what's the expression? Goel, let's say, Tavar Goel, in modern Hebrew it means a disgusting thing, something that's unpleasant and disgusting. Well, it's interesting, it's the same basic root word as the word of redemption. That's very common in Russian Kodesh, that sometimes the same word can have two opposite, depending on the context of which you find itself, as the one on the word chait. The word chait means sin or improperness, but it can also mean to purify. The chatei, esabai, is a certain, when they get to the goyim of the house, it's written that you have to come and be mechatei esabayis, to purify and cleanse the house. So the different root words sometimes can be used in the opposite way. So the Eibusha said that Leosid, he's going to appear immediately before the Geula in spoiled and stained clothes. Well, that will be from the blood and the other impurities which have sprinkled on the divine begodim from having to do with finishing off with all the goyim and dealing with all the things that the Eibusha have to deal with prior to the Geula. And the sooner that occurs, the better. And hopefully it'll be taken from Yad Mamish. Because it's very hard to imagine how the Eibusha can earn. Certainly the world is not earning anything from the waiting. However, we see that even Kaviyochel by the Eibusha having to do with the levushim of the oilam and causes a certain flashback of Peselas on his garments. Ulazois chorik tahara v'havore, and therefore even the Eibusha's garments, and how much more so by the Odom, we need a purification and a removal. Havora means to get rid of, to remove altogether. So we could say that's two different levels. The Havora means to get rid of things which are mamish, impossible to be mavara and to elevate, and tahara means to maybe cleanse and elevate and purify certain inyonim. Okay, my kain yesh leima. Well, so since we see that, we can now apply that to Reb Zera, having wanted, even though he knew the tremendous mile in Talmud Bavli, nonetheless he wanted to not to forget the actual learning of Talmud Bavli, all the things that he'd learned there, but to forget the way of learning in Talmud Bavli. Yesh leima be'isa chatira b'kushiyas be'helomis shahin mitzad ha'klippas olazois hagam shalidei ze boim l'madrega elyon yoiser, just like in the Avedas HaBirurim of the Adam when he's Aveda be'klala selam hazeh mikol mochim hari mislabshim b'levushim de klippas noiga. Nonetheless, you have to enter into the levushim, in the kushiyas, as we saw the kushiyas come mitadin into the klippas, and particularly the helem of klippas noiga. Then in order to remove those kashis, you have to enter them in order to find as it were, a teretz and a way of avoiding the kasha. Tahara. And therefore we need tahara. V'im loi harei zeh maval bel. Once you go up onto a higher madrega, then that achizan, that peselas in the levushim is maval. It causes a lack of ability to grasp on a much higher level. So that was the Rebbe. That's why we suggested Reb Zera when he wanted to forget the oifen halimud of Talmud Bavli in order that he should be able to be oilet to such a madrega of Talmud Yerushalmi, because through all the kushas and all the emes you reach a much higher madrega, but in the meantime there's a price, and the price is that there's certain like the Avedas HaBirurim or the Adam B'Pashtas, there's a certain zuklepenish, as they say in Yiddish, a certain sticking on of the clippers which were hidden in the kasha, or the clippers which caused the Helen V'Esa, the kasha. Even though you answered the terrace and you were ridded the kasha of its toikev and of its Helen, nonetheless you had to deal with that kasha. And there was a certain very delicate trace of a peselas, which on a higher level that becomes a dovaha maval bel. It confuses and interferes with your ability to reach the emes of the higher madrega. So therefore, that's one teretz that the Rebbe suggests. However, that's one teretz that we can suggest, but he said, according to that, hu mitzad levushim levad. He said that's only mitzad the union of levushim. In other words, not mitzad the etzem eisik in Talmud Yerushalmi, and not mitzad the etzem pnimius of the eisik in Talmud Bavli, purely mitzad the union of halevushim. Then, said the Rebbe, our whole teretz is that you just need to purify and get rid of certain levushim. There's a tremendous mile in learning in the way of Talmud Bavli. He didn't want to forget that at all. He just wanted to cleanse himself from those certain traces of peselas only in the levushim, only in the actual having had to do with the kasha, but not the result of the Kasha and the Torah. And even that can be Mavalbo. It's purely a Dora mitzad levushim levad, but not mitzad the etzem hasogya. And that's why he wanted to rid himself of that Peselis literally from Klippas Nega that came about through Yosek in the Kushiyas of Talmud Bavli. The Rebbe said, Lafi Zeh, it's only mitzad levushim. Well, Lafi Mashin is Buel Yil, where we mentioned this earlier, in the second Maimah, the Hemshah, who mitzad hasogya, sheboin, Talmud Yerushalmi. I have a feeling that this may be a Torah, even though in the new print that they printed these, Chovrot, they didn't notice it. But I have a feeling, if you look carefully, you'll see that what the Rebbe points out over there is that the Hasoga, how it is in Talmud Yerushalmi, is Ein Arech, like how it is in Babel. So, instead of being written, Hu Mitzad Hasoga, Sheba Ein Arech, the Talmud Yerushalmi. I think that's what should be written, not just Boin. What are we coming to in Talmud Yerushalmi? The Hasoga, how it is in Talmud Bavli, is Ein Arech, Lagabi, how it is in Talmud Yerushalmi. And therefore, since it's an Ein Arech, that's what he points out over there. Somewhere we're going to an incomparably higher level, then you've got to forget the previous level. Because the previous level will just hold you back, as it were. Therefore, you've got to get completely out of that previous level to come to a much higher level in the Inyan and the Hasoga. And therefore, there's missing a word, the Kemat Zicha, and it's a pillar that I didn't notice it in this new thing. Maybe they're so busy writing Ziyar all over the place that they did. That was Mavalbo. Anyway, excuse the sarcasm, but sometimes it's a little bit Mavalbo. So, therefore, says the Rebbe, that over there we explained that it was a difference in Hasoga, that the type of Hasoga in Talmud Bavli can't be compared to the type of Hasoga in Talmud Yerushalmi. It's a much higher level, and that's why it's a more Chochmah Brura, because it's on a much higher level that you just go straight into the Emes. And therefore you've got to get rid of a whole way of grasping in Yonim in order to come to a much higher one. So Lefizel, according to that Hezbollah, it doesn't have to do with the Levushim, it doesn't have to do with the Levushim, no, it's got to do with the form of Hasoga. That's a whole new level, which is by Ein Arech in the Inyan of Talmud Yerushalmi compared to Talmud Bavli. So therefore we can't say that Torah, so we just answered now. V'yefshe, says the Rebbe, if we go with that shitta, that it's got nothing to do with the Levushim so much, but with the Etzem Hasoga, Efshe is the B'chinas Hasoga, the Torah, Sheb'chinas Oyer Yosho. Shekam b'Talmud Bavli, Yesh B'chinas Oyer Yosho, Ve'er Choiza. Ve'Hasoga, Sheb'chinas Oyer Yosho, Sheb'Talmud Bavli, Ein Arech, L'gabi B'chinas Oyer Yosho, the Talmud Yerushalmi, Kanal. So Rebbe said that what we should suggest is that what is Ein Arech in Yerushalmi compared to Bavli? We just said that in Bavli, through the Yikiyah, you come to the Helem Ha'achmi of Chochmah, and even higher than that, you come to the Shorosh HaTorah, this is Mamish and Ha'achmi, saying so. So it's hard to say that the Hasoga in Talmud Bavli is Ein Arech l'gabe Talmud Yerushalmi lefi kol ha'mavua ka. And that was it. Maybe we could say that it's talking only about one aspect of the Hasoga. In other words, that even though the Talmud Bavli's got the Maila of a Choizer, this going back through the Ribi HaKushiyas, but there's a Zichar that also in Talmud Bavli, there's also what we call Ve'er Yosho. There's also, at the beginning, particularly, there's the Hasoga had comes Mulachatchila to the Mensch. And then through Ribi Yikiyah, he comes to an Komo, we hire him. Ve'ilu in Talmud Yerushalmi, the whole Ika way of functioning over there is Oyer Yosha, like we pointed out. It's all just clarified things which don't require, and they're on a much higher level than the whole Bira and the whole Yigiyah in the Kashiyas with Terutzim V'chulu. In that particular Inyan, in the level of Oyer Yosha, then we could say that Talmud Bavli is less to almost Ein Arech extent than in Talmud Yerushalmi. Aber Enoch Hanami, that story with Reb Zera is not got to do with the mile of the Erechoizer that is in the Bible. It's talking only about a certain comparison of two inyonim which are similar mitzad etzem inyonim, and that's the inyan von Yosha.
We said before that Rebbe brought an example of the Arizal sweating over halacha.
Yeah, we already spoke about that.
Completely clear cut. So how could that?
Huh?
You understand the halacha is completely clear cut, like the Talmud Yerushalmi. How could
well, he wasn't learning Talmud Yerushalmi though. He was learning Talmud.
He was learning halacha, which is even more.
Talmud Bavli. So we brought down that he learned the Talmud Bavli in 7 ways. He had 6 ways connected to Sheshes Yemei HaChol, and the 7th way was connected to Yom HaShabbos. Yom HaShabbos was a different way from altogether. In the 6 days of the Chol, he used to learn Davki B'derech HaChol, and Davki with the struggle, the Turutzim, the Kashis, to the point of Zayar, that he sweated. That's what we pointed out. I mean, that's not a kasha. On the contrary, that's just part of the whole picture. We asked another kasha that the Rizal was in Eretz that when the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital noticed that was already when the Rizal was in Eretz Yisrael. So the Chodesh already got the mile of Ein Turk at Eretz Yisrael, what they're going to do. So we pointed out that nonetheless that's not necessarily a kasha, because the Ikar Limud was Limud of Talmud Bavli. So therefore we could say that and here the Rebbe then narrows down what he said over there. It follows what we said over there, that there's a Maila Ein Arich in Talmud Yerushalmi Gabi Bavli, in the Asoga, not in the Levushim. I have to say that's only in one aspect in which both of them are comparable. The Haina, the Oyer Yosha Shebedoa, the Oyer Yosha that there is in Talmud Bavli, compared to the Maila of the Oyer Yosha, how it is in Talmud Yerushalmi, Ein Chanami, that's Ein Arich. In order to reach that type of Gili of Yosha, then Reb Zera fasted in order to literally lose the type of Asoga of Yosha, how it is in Talmud Bavli. No, says the Rebbe, where are we? Evahu mitzad Asoga, Eva Efshe Shezel B'chinas Asoga Deteresh B'chinas Yosha, שגם בתלמוד בבלי יש בחינת יושע וערך חייזר, והסוגה של בחינת יושע שבתלמוד בבלי אין ערך לגבי בחינת יושע בתלמוד ירושלמי כנ"ל. Okay? Omno, says the Rebbe, it's a little bit difficult to answer that purely, even though that's also a teretz. In other words, we've answered 2 tirutzim, but each time we're sort of somewhat modifying them. It's not that we've let them go altogether. It's not that we're mevatel those tirutzim, but we move in the light of other factors, we tend to come to another way of understanding. So the same thing here. Omnam vade Reb Zera hoya gam kein b'chinas oyer choizer, u'kiyadu Reb Zera hoya choref u'machshe, ki de'isha b'gemara shilohi hoyriyas, v'hu inen apilpu v'churu. So here it says the Rebbe, it's a little bit difficult to answer that teretz. Chavues ki Reb Zera, he was a choref u'machshe. And therefore we have to say that his whole way of learning was davke in the even of Oyer Choizer. Even though he was coming out and you've answered tells that he wanted to deal only with the Oyer Yosha in Talmud Yerushalmi compared to how he had Oyer Yosha in Talmud Bavli. The Rebbe said that's very hard to learn, because the whole way of learning of Reb Zera is brought down that it was davke or even of an Oyer Choizer. So it's very hard to say that he would just change his whole nature, his whole way of learning, and be mevatel that and become another person altogether in order to learn Talmud Yerushalmi, because he had a special mile in it that he was what's called a choref u'machsheh. Ela im kain will say that that's why he fasted, to stop being a choref u'machsheh. That's a little bit hard to say, because that's a tchuna. In the etzem tchuna nafshi is in the etzem oifen of the neshama of that person for shor shalamayla. So it's hard to say that he would fast in order to stop being that. So what does it mean choref u'machsheh? What does it mean here? So the Gemara brings down over there at the end of Masechet Shiloi means at the end of. Shilohei is a way of saying the Gemara towards the end of. At the end of the Masechet Hoydiyas, over there there's a famous passage. Well, it's a little bit difficult to get involved in the whole Arichas Ha'inyan, because it's spoken about a lot in Teves. There's a lot of different biurim in Teves, and we're going to sort of have to refer briefly to it, but without getting too involved, at least not too involved in the whole complexity. And the Gemara brings down over there that in the early period of the Amoraim, Rabbah, in the time of Rabbah and Abaye, Rabbah, not Rabbah, no Rabbah, Rabbah bar Nachmani, and Rav Yosef, they were in Bavel, and the Gemara says that Rabbah and Rav Yosef were two different types of people. And the Gemara says that Rabbah was what we call an oiker horim. He was an uprooter of mountains. And Rav Yosef was Sinai. He was the type of person was called a Sinai, Mount Sinai. So Rashi explains over there, the way of learning of Rabbah was with Tupul, with Kushias, whatever. He's compared like moving mountains one against the other. I say they seem to be perfectly restful. He would root up a mountain and try and make it clash with another mountain. Oiker, the word oiker means to uproot mountains, because he was always asking these tremendously difficult kashiyas and coming to a new conclusion. That's Rabbah. Rav Yosef, he was a Sinai. So Rashi said, why is he called Sinai? Because at Sinai it was given all that you needed to know, not all the kashas and the terutzim, but somebody who's called Sinai is like a man that he's got all the knowledge. He knows all the prices, he knows all the mishnayos, he knows everything. But he's not necessarily into all the pilful so much. And therefore, Rabbah and Rabbi Yosef, they were contemporaries at the same time, and they wanted to know. There was a question on the part of all the Chachamim, who should become the Rosh, who should be literally the Melech, Babava, and the Gemara calls it Melech, the one who was like the Rosh, called a Chachamim, he was called like the Melech. It's interesting, Molach, Melech, the Gemara used the expression. Who should it be, Rabbah or Rabbi Yosef? So they sent to Eretz Yisrael, they sent over messengers to Eretz Yisrael to ask by the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael who should be the Rosh in Bovel. Should it be Rabbah or should it be Rabbi Yosef? So it's written that the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael sent back, and they said that Hakol Trichim Lamore Chitin, that somebody who's got a silo, and he's got all the chitim inside the silo, then eventually everybody's going to have to need him. Because if everything's all right, then he provides. They make bread out, and that's how they eat. If Cholila there's a famine or there's a difficult year, then everybody comes to like in this week's Pasha, everybody comes looking for Yosef, because he's got all the eitra. So he's the one that everybody needs. That was in the Gemara. Hakul Tzrichim Lamore Chitin. Everybody needs the one that's got all the tavua. So that meant Rabbi Yosef, because he's got all the information. You ask him anything, he'll tell you, but he's not into the whole thing from pill. So that what the Gemara says, that they answered that Hakul Tzrichim Lamore Chitin. And yet Apoyo, Rabbi Yosef didn't take the leadership. He said, no, Rabbah has to take it. Anyway, that's a pillar. They sent to ask, so they got their answer. In other words, they didn't keep the age of what the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael said. So the whole business, the Gemara in Brachas says that the reason why Rabbi Yosef didn't want to do it is that he'd been told by a seer, by what's called a Kaldoya. Kaldoya is these people, they knew Atida, so they could tell you futures, that if he became the leader, the Nasi of the Chachamim, that he would only live for 2 years. And so therefore Rabbi Yosef said, it's better Rabbah take it over. And it's written that Rabbah, he was the Nasi for 22 years. 22 years. And Rabbi Yosef, Rashi said over there, that Rabbi Yosef, Mila Shnoisov, but he didn't take the leadership. And then when Rabbah was Mistalik, Rabbi Yosef took over, and he was only 2.5 years. And then he was Mistalik. So whatever Kumtais, that for whatever reason they didn't take on the Eitzah, or the real Eitzah of the Chachmei Yerushalayim said was that it has to be the Sinai. He's better than the Oika Hor. The Gemara tells the whole story. Then the Gemara says that there was Rab Zera and Rabbi Baba Nosson and Rabbi Dazin. They were sitting, and Abaya was there also. Now Abaya, he was from the same generation as Rabbah, but he was a bit later because he was really a Talmud of Rabbah, the truth is. And they were sitting, and they said, "Who's going to be our leader?" In other words, Rab Zera, Rabbi Baba Nosson, and we asked what's the name, Abaya. They're sitting, and we're the leaders of the Chachamim. Who's going to be the leader? Who's going to be the Rosh? So they said, "Well, we don't know." So they said, "Okay, let's see. Whoever will say a thing that nobody can find a kasha against it, and it will remain without any kasha, he'll be the one." So it's written that Reb Zera said something, they found a kasha, and then he answered, and they found another kasha. The same with, what's his name, Rab Bar Nosson. Of Abaya, he said something, and they asked the kasha, but then he answered that, and they tried to ask, and they couldn't ask any more kasha. So Abaya became the leader, and then the Gemara says that there was two other Chachamim, Rabbi Bar Nosson and they called him what's his name, Reb Zera. They were two special types of Chachamim. Which is greater? Which is more preferable? And the Gemara says, take it. We don't know. The Gemara is not able to answer. So what does the Gemara say? The Gemara says that Reb Zera was a Chorif U'Machshir. He was tremendously sharp, and he was always asking kashiyas and this. And Rabbi Bar Nosson, he was what they call him, a Mosun U'Masik. He was much more gradual, and he could always reach a final maskana. In other words, the Chorif U'Machshir, he doesn't really reach a clear maskana. He's always asking too much kashiyas. He doesn't reach a clear finality. The Iru Mosun U'Masik, he doesn't ask so many kashiyas. He's able to bring everything down and find a maskana. Rashi says that he's masik aliba de hilchas. He paskins what is the Yamas Halacha Vila, the Chorif U'Machshir, not so much. So the Gemara says, take him, we don't know who's greater. So the Fizeh Kumta is that the Gemara says that Zera, he was a Chorif U'Machshir. If Reb Zera was a Chorif U'Machshir, then that means he had the Mila of Oil Choyzer, because a Chorif U'Machshir is somebody that he's all the time going back, and he's looking for, he's never satisfied, and he takes away one kasha, he gets another kasha, and he gets another kasha. That's a Chorif U'Machshir. So, says the Gemara, if that's the case, says the Rebbe, that Reb Zera was a Chorif U'Machshir, he wasn't a master, U'Masi, then for sure he had the tremendous Mila of Oil Choyzer. He had this unbelievable Mila of Oil Choyzer. If that's the case, it's hard to say that he wanted to get rid of his etzem characteristic. I mean, that was his etzem characteristic, that he fasted in order to stop being a Chorif U'Machshir. You can't do that. A Chorif U'Machshir is in your etzem building of your nefesh. As if so, then Reb Zera was zicher very much into the inyan of Oil Choyzer. And therefore it's very hard to say that his whole inyan of fasting, his whole inyan of wanting to alter himself, was that he should become shaykh only to Yoshua. His whole inyan was below of Oil Choyzer. So how do we say no? His whole inyan was only in the Yoshua Badova, but forget about the Oil Choyzer. So the Rebbe said, alright, Gam Kem Kiddush Oil Choyzer. וכידו דרב זיה חורף ומקשה, כדיסה בגמר שלא יהוידיה, והוא הנה הפילפו. If that's the case, how can we say that he wanted to forget Talmud Bavli in order to come to Yerushalayim? Only in Ur Yoshua. Ur Yoshua wasn't really his line. So he sort of mild the Ur Yoshua in Talmud Yerushalayim. Hard to say that was his whole inyan in fasting and in trying to change himself. So that's like coming back to the kasha. Why was he fasting in order to get rid of the Mila of Talmud? Well, if he mashu goes macha, I ever been chorish u'machshir lamosun u'masik. So let's look at what's written in another place. What's the difference between chorif u'machshir lamosun u'masik? The chorif u'machshir Ushemeroiv Harifusoi Bakushi is, that he's got this tremendous sharpness and how do you call it, Harifus, sharpness and pilpul Bakushi is. Afo Pishazel Ilui God. Mivko Mokim Leacha Yiridose Mitachlis Hahelium Koze Lo Yuchel Lekaven Liamitas Adin Vialocha. Ekshu al Piamitius Shel Toiro. Omosenu Masik Hu Gam Kein Chorif Umakshi. Aval Yiridose Laacha Hapilpu Ule Asuki Shmaitza Aliba de Hilchese Davka. We said that there's a difference between this Chorif Umakshi and Mosiku Mosa. So the truth is that if you look carefully in the Gemara over there, it becomes a big question. Why did Rab Zera and his friends have this whole question? It had already been asked before by Rabbi mit Rabbi Yosef, that who's more, the Chorif or the person that simply knows more. Sent there so, and they had an answer. It was no more. They're asking who's really going to be our leader. They should have said straight away that Adikoim, Rabbi of this, he would be leader because he was Mosano or Masi. And in the end it turned out that Abai was really the leader. So there we have to say that the fact that Rabbi Yosef wasn't a Kabul, but even though he had a good reason, because he was worried about something might happen to him or Chayz was, over there to the fact that they weren't Makabal what they said, well, that left us sophic as to what was really the Maila Amiti, is whether the Maila was Takia Sinai or whether the Maila was Chorifu Umakshi. Oikahorim. And we could say that Chorifu Umakshi and Oikahorim is the same as Oikahorim and Sinai is the same as Chorifu Umakshi and Mosanu Masik. They have a connection together, and therefore they asked it over again. These Moraim, how they were involved, they said again, who's going to be the leader? And then the Gemara says, well, Abaya remained because he won the competition. But Sokosof, there was two people there that liked these two inyonim. And which of them is really the Maila? Had it not been the Maisa with the fact that Abaya won the competition, who would we have chosen if we'd really been left to a case of emissary choosing? Who would have left? And the Gemara says, take it. The Gemara says, we're not really sure. And why aren't we really sure? Because that what the Chachmei Eretz Yisrael said wasn't really kept Lapoyo. In Mamil, maybe that's not really the emissary. Maybe there is a Maila in Chorif Umakshi, in Oikahorim. Maybe he's really the emissary. But the emissary Balabaska, we see that who was the one that was Mola 22 years, the one who was actually the leader of all the Chachamim for 22 was Rabbah. And Rabbah was Oikahorim or a Chorif Umakshi, and therefore the Gemara remains with a Sophic Badova. And later on, I was tempted to learn that way the Gemara. Later I found in Toshin Ches a big higher about this big from the Rebbe Melech Mashiach, where the Rebbe says, the Rebbe connects the two sugyas together, and he says that the Ram should one of day, because otherwise it's very hard to make sense out of the whole thing. And I wiped the sweat off my brow, and I said I was going in the way. I mean, the Rebbe does it with unbelievable Giona. It's all different. It was the Nakuda that I was looking for, that I was trying to get at. See that the Rebbe goes in that way. And therefore, the whole Indian about Chorif Umakshi is the Maila of Oikahorim, but that remained in the Sophic, because Rabbi Yosef didn't take over. At 22 years, that's a big amount of time that the Abe should let Rabbah rule the show, and he was Oikahorim, and that's Indian from Chorif Umakshi. So maybe there's Taka Maila in the Indian from Chorif Umakshi, and then what the Gemara says, take it. The Gemara says, we're not really sure, we don't really know how to sort it all out. Is it the is it fact that Rav Yosef was looking to save his years? Who knows what was really going on? We don't really know clearly what is the final Mashkona. So there comes along the Rebbe here, and he says we have to say that person that he's a Motzanu Masik, he also has to be a little bit of a Chorif Umakshi. Otherwise he doesn't fit the bill. How to say he's just a Chorif, he's just a Motzanu Mas. All he does is just say things, this is Allah, this is Allah, but he doesn't know the pilpuls and all the discussions how can he really know, the emes of where the halacha really fall? And then we have to say that even the Masanu Masik, he's a little bit, well, not just a little bit, but he's got a trace of the Chorif Makshe as well. And therefore, says the Rebbe, that's what we're now saying, that the Chorif Makshe, Ushi Meroiv Chalifusei, because she is, Afa Pisa illegal, Mikol Mokin Leacha, Yiridosei, Mitachlas Helam, since he goes into one Helam after the other, well, that's the Kashiyas, Lo Yuchol Lechavin Leamitis Hadin V'Alocha. He can't come down and say, this is my, he's still living in all these different kashas, and he still appears to him that maybe he's going to have another kasha, maybe he's got another problem. But he can't really say, listen guys, let's settle it all down and come down to the bottom line. What's the bottom line? This is the halacha. It's very hard for him to do that. Therefore, he can't really tell us what is the din eikshahu al pi amitosei shel toiro. Or mosanu masik who gam kein chorav u'maksh. I am as a Masanu Masik has to have a certain mile also Chorif Makshe. Avli Ridose Leacha Pilpu Huli Asuki Shmaitza Libede Hufis Adavke. He can come down and paskin even though he's asked a lot of kashiyas. In other words, he's able to tell you what is the emes of halacha. Vayim Bapirush Rashi Bahiri Yisham Abatesis Harosh Kamoy Huve Ba'ain Yanki. Now Ain Yanki is not Tesis Harosh. The Tesis Rosh in Hoyriyas, and I tried to look it up. It's written in such small letters that even with my glass I couldn't read it. I'll have to bring a magnifying or get a little bit on in years. Even with my glass I couldn't read it. It was very, very small print in the shas I have upstairs. So I can't really say clearly what the Tesis Rosh says over there. But he's not in the, maybe in the old days, in the Ein Yankee, they used to bring the Tesis. Nowadays, in our Ein Yankee, there's not a Tesis. Right? Anyway, what Rashi says is that the infant must know Masik. It's must be in Rashi that he also doesn't just say, oh, this is the halacha, but he also goes into a lot of discussion. But he's able to come down and paskin the halacha. He said, he said, according to that, it's good. According to that, the whole kasha is not a kasha. Why? Because since Reb Zeira Ika Avidos, he was Chorif U'Maksheh, and therefore he wanted to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. Talmud Yerushalmi is paskening halacha, coming down to a maskana and paskening the halacha is clearly halacha brura. He wasn't able to do that, and therefore he had to forget his whole way of learning in order to come to the infant Talmud Yerushalmi, because he was Be'ika, like the Gemara said, Reb Zeira Chorif U'Maksheh. He wanted to keep his Chorif U'Maksheh, but he wanted to be Zeira also to the Maila of Mosanu or Masiko that he didn't have in Bovel. Then we had to fast in order to avoid what he had in Bovel and make it higher and more elevated. And that would be particularly good as a mind from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where the Frierdiker Rebbe says that emes of Mosanu Masik is really Kaveh Tzoi. He's like the Makshe Chorif Makshe is Gvura, and Mosanu Masik is eating from Chasodim. And emes of Mosanu Masik, he's also like Rebbe says, he's also a Chorif Makshe, at least to a certain extent. He's like the middle point. He's like the Kaveh Tzoi. Therefore, he's able to deduct me out of Kaveh the Halacha la Mitose, because he's koilo, as it were, to stay days. But that's what the Gemara says. We're going to get to Halacha. But there's the infant Lakavan Emes, and then there's the infant Emes La Mitoi, but that's the infant Halacha. And so there's the infant Emes La Mitoi, that's the infant Kaveh Emtoi. So that he's able to be Mekavan, the infant Halacha. Well, if he said Nicha, according to that, there's no cash.
The Chorif U'Maksheh, if he keeps on asking questions, when he eventually comes to Emes, whatever, like we said before, that he eventually comes to a point where he knows the...
Yeah, but that's only if he's got also, if he's been mevatel somehow or another, the teva of the etzem Chorif U'Maksheh, and he's able to come down and paskin the halacha l'oil. That's not in the etzem tchuna of Chorif U'Maksheh. Well, we said that after the whole in, it's very hard for him to come down. On the contrary, so he can't really do that. And so that's what Reb Zeira wanted to do. So if he said it's very good. What Reb Zeira wanted to do was to go from the Kava Gvura into the Kava Emtsoi. He wanted to get into the mile of being koil both of them outrageous together. And therefore the Rebbe said, Lafize Nicha. What Nicha means that then the kasha is, as it were, restful. It's not a kasha anymore. And then we just answer one more test, and that'll be enough for the scenery. Gam yesh lema, the begilui oyer yesh maila yezer betalmud Yerushalmi. Of our pilpul the Talmud Bavli hagam shemagim lebchina amitius ha'atzmas mikol mokim ika hagilui mizeh yeli liotid shetizkala haTorah kamo shehi lebchina shashuim ha'atzmiyim. The Rebbe said that with all the milas in Talmud Bavli, it's all hidden still. And even all the kashas and terutzim bring you to these tremendously high madregas. Of those are the madregas which be'ika are going to be miskala when Mashiach will come. And that's why it is that in the last galas, prior to these galas of Mashiach, you didn't have to work so much with the Talmud Bavli. It's very interesting that one of the Ger Rabbeim was Mechadish is how they learning Talmud Yerushalmi. It's well known that the Rebbe praised that. And it was a very good thing that he said today, because that was the time he gave. The Leiv Samech, one of the Ger Rebbe's, as he said that the whole Inif and Talmud Yerushalmi is Me'ain when Mashiach would come in. The Seif Mitlan and Talmud Yerushalmi, there will be a ability to be Makar to Mashiach. That's exactly. That's a good few years ago. And therefore in Ger they learned Talmud Yerushalmi, like we learn Rambam, Talmud Yerushalmi. The Indian is that the Rebbe that the Gilui Oyer in Talmud Yerushalmi is greater. The potential Gilui in Talmud Bavli is unbelievable, and that's Mamish Be'atzmus, but it's not Begilui. It's only going to be Begilui Mamish when Mashiach will come. And therefore, Reb Zera, he'd had enough of him. He wanted Gilui Mamish. Therefore, he said, let's sort of get out of the whole way of learning in Talmud Bavli, and let's have Gilui Mamish. What in Talmud Yerushalmi the is more, and to a certain extent that's only the of the Osid, but not in the way that it'll be through the from learning Talmud Bavli. So there we are. It should be with great